no one's ever taken my hand," she admitted. The rancher smiled and moved gently. Clara pulled her small suitcase over the dusty road, the wheels crunching softly on the gravel. Breath. She had never been to the countryside before, and the vast openness of the land made her feel both nervous and strangely free.
The city felt far away now, along with its endless noise, honking cars and people who never seemed to stop talking.
There, the air smelled of earth and grass, and the soft wind carried a hint of flowers and hay. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe properly. The ranch stretched out before her, a sprawling landscape of green fields, brown fences, and wooden barns that looked like they had been standing for decades. A few horses grazed quietly, their tails swishing slowly as they chewed on the grass. The sun was low in the sky, casting a warm, golden light that made the world feel gentle and safe. Clara had always dreamed of visiting a place like this, somewhere quiet, where people lived simply, and life wasn't measured by deadlines or traffic lights. But she had never imagined she would come here alone, carrying nothing but her suitcase and her own fears. As she approached the main house, a figure appeared at the porch. Brace. Luke, the rancher, was tall and strong, with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they had worked hard all his life. His hair was a little sun-bleached at the ends, and his eyes were calm, almost like he had learned to see everything without rushing to judge it. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, with boots that had clearly been used for years. There was a quiet strength about him, and for reasons Clara couldn't explain, she felt safe even before he spoke. "Hello," he said, his voice soft but confident. "You must be Clara." "Yes," she replied, shifting her suitcase to her other hand. Her voice sounded small to her own ears, as if it didn't quite belong to her. "Bration. I'm here for the summer. I thought maybe I could help out on the ranch in exchange for a place to stay." Pfft. Luke nodded slowly, giving her a small smile.
"That's fine."
"We could use an extra pair of hands. It's not fancy work, but it's honest. And you'll learn fast if you're willing to try." Clara felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. She had never worked on a ranch before. She had grown up in a city, going to school, reading books, and spending afternoons in coffee shops. But here, everything seemed different. The air smelled stronger, the ground felt real under her feet, and even the sun seemed warmer. She wondered if she could really belong in a place like this, even for a few months. Luke led her around the property, showing her the barn, the stables, and the small vegetable garden near the back. Grasp. Each place had a story, and he spoke quietly, almost as if he were talking to himself as much as to her. Clara watched him carefully, noticing the way he handled the animals with gentle authority. A horse nickered as they approached, and Luke stroked its neck calmly, whispering something she couldn't quite hear. The horse leaned into his hand, trusting him completely. Clara realized that this man had a quiet patience she had never experienced before, and it made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope.
After the tour, Luke showed her the small guest room in the house.
It was simple, with a neatly made bed, a wooden dresser, and a window that looked out over the fields. Sunlight streamed in, making the room feel warm and welcoming. Clara set down her suitcase and looked out the window. The world was so wide here.
There were no buildings, no streets crowded with cars, only endless grass, a few scattered trees, and the distant hills that seemed to touch the sky. She took a deep breath, letting the scent of the earth fill her lungs.
That evening, she joined Luke for dinner in the kitchen. The table was small, but it felt homey. The meal was simple: roast chicken, fresh vegetables from the garden, and warm bread. Luke talked about his day on the ranch, the work that needed to be done, and the animals he cared for. Clara listened quietly, feeling a strange comfort in the rhythm of his words. Breaking, she realized that she didn't have to fill the silence with chatter. Being here, listening and observing, was enough. After dinner, they stepped outside to watch the sunset. The sky was painted with oranges and pinks, fading slowly into purple. Clara felt a little shiver of awe. She had seen many sunsets in the city, but none of them had felt like this. Like the sun was setting not just in the sky, but inside her too, washing away all her worries. Luke stood beside her, hands in his pockets, looking out at the fields. He didn't try to fill the moment with words. He just stood there, steady and calm, and Clara felt a connection without needing to explain it. The first night in the guest room was quiet, almost too quiet. Clara lay awake, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the soft lowing of cows, the rustling of leaves in the wind, and the distant neigh of a horse. In the city, nights had been filled with traffic, sirens, and shouting neighbors. Here, the world seemed to breathe slowly, giving her a chance to breathe too. She thought about the life she had left behind, the crowded streets, the constant rush, and the loneliness that had followed her even among people. Here, everything felt different. Here, she felt like she could start over. The next morning, Clara woke early, eager to begin her first day of work. She put on sturdy boots and followed Luke to the stables. He handed her a brush and showed her how to groom the horses, explaining gently how to move around them safely. Preferably, Clara's hands were awkward at first, unsure of how much pressure to use or where to stand. But the horses seemed to sense her hesitation and shifted nervously. Luke stood beside her, his presence steady and reassuring.
"It's okay," he said. "Take your time."
They'll feel you're calm if you stay calm yourself. By midday, Clara had learned to handle the horses with more confidence.
She could feel the muscles under their skin, the warmth of their bodies, and the rhythm of their breathing.
It was tiring work, but it was honest and real. For the first time in a long time, Clara felt useful. She realized that this place didn't just ask for labor. It asked for care, patience, and attention, breath. And she wanted to give all of that, even if it scared her at first. During lunch, they sat on the porch, eating sandwiches Luke had prepared. Clara watched the fields, noticing the way the light shifted across the grass, how the birds flew in patterns that seemed almost planned, and how the wind bent the trees ever so slightly. Luke spoke of the seasons, the challenges of ranch life, and the satisfaction that came from seeing hard work bear fruit. Clara listened, fascinated. She had read about hard work and simple living, but experiencing it was entirely different. It made her heart feel lighter, as if the weight of her old life was slowly lifting. By evening, Clara was exhausted, her muscles sore but her spirit invigorated. Luke smiled at her as they finished feeding the animals, a quiet approval in his eyes. "You did well today," he said. "Not many can step into ranch life so easily."
Clara felt a blush rise to her cheeks.
But she had feared failure, feared looking foolish, but Luke's words made her feel capable. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not just for what she could do, but for who she was. Fast, as they walked back to the house, the sky turned a deep shade of blue, stars beginning to twinkle overhead. Clara felt a peacefulness she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know what the future held, or whether she would be able to stay here for long. But in this moment, surrounded by open land, quiet animals, and the gentle presence of Luke, she felt that maybe she had found a place where she could heal. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the sounds of the ranch, Clara thought about how strange it was that she had come here to escape. Yet she already felt like she belonged. The city, with its noise and rush, seemed like a distant memory. Here, life was slower, but it was full of small joys, quiet lessons, and the possibility of connection. And somehow she felt that this connection, once it came, would be different from anything she had ever known. As sleep finally took her, Clara whispered to herself, almost as if saying it out loud could make it real. Maybe here I can finally find my place. The next morning, Clara woke before the sun, the soft light spilling into her room like a promise. She could hear the gentle sounds of the ranch waking up, the lowing of cows, the distant crow of a rooster, and the faint rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. She dressed quickly in her sturdy boots and worn jeans, eager to start another day. Today she would learn more about the life she had stepped into, and something inside her stirred with excitement, even though she tried not to admit it. Luke was already outside tending to the animals. He looked up when he heard her footsteps on the gravel and gave her a small wave. Clara felt a warmth in her chest at that simple gesture. It was not a grand welcome, but it was genuine. She approached him, carrying a bucket of feed, feeling the weight of it and of the day ahead. "Morning," Luke said, his voice calm, almost like the earth itself. "The horses need feeding first, and then we'll check the fences before it gets too hot." They worked together in a quiet harmony, each knowing what to do without needing to speak too much. Luke handed her the feed, showing her how to measure it carefully and pour it into the troughs. The horses nudged her hands with their noses, and she laughed softly, surprised by how much she enjoyed the task.
It was hard work, but it felt honest, grounding her in the present moment.
After feeding the horses, they moved on to the fences. Some of the wooden posts had rotted during the winter, and the boards needed replacing. Luke demonstrated how to hammer nails safely and securely, and Clara followed his instructions carefully. Her muscles ached from the effort, but she felt proud of herself for learning so quickly. But Luke noticed her diligence and offered quiet encouragement.
"You're a fast learner,"
he said. "That's good. It means you're paying attention." They worked side by side for hours, the sun climbing higher in the sky. Breath. Clara had never experienced labor like this before. The way it demanded both strength and patience. Yet, with Luke nearby, it felt manageable. But he never rushed her, and he never made her feel clumsy or incapable. There was something comforting in that, something she hadn't realized she was craving. She felt herself opening up to him, even without speaking, because he made the work feel like a shared effort rather than a test. During lunch, they sat on a worn bench under a large oak tree.
Luke had brought sandwiches and fresh fruit from the garden. They ate in silence for a while, enjoying the cool shade and the gentle rustling of leaves.
Bray. Clara finally spoke, almost hesitantly. I've
never worked on a farm before,
she admitted.
City life? It's so different.
Everything moves so fast there, and people don't really notice what's around them. The city has its own rhythm, he said. But the ranch, it's different. Here, life moves at the pace of the animals, the wind, and the seasons. It teaches you patience, observation, and care. Sometimes it can be hard, but it's honest. Clara smiled softly, feeling understood in a way she rarely did. But she had spent so much of her life hiding behind polite smiles, afraid to show her true feelings. But with Luke, she felt a quiet freedom. She didn't need to impress him, and she didn't need to explain herself fully. His calm presence seemed to accept her just as she was, and it was a relief she hadn't expected. After lunch, they returned to the stables to groom the horses. Clara's hands were more confident now, moving over the animals' coats with care and precision. Luke stood beside her, occasionally offering tips but mostly allowing her space to work. They talked softly about the horses, their personalities, and the small quirks that made each one unique. Clara found herself laughing at some of Luke's stories, a sound that felt foreign to her ears, but wonderfully natural.
As the afternoon wore on, they moved on to the vegetable garden.
For how to tend to the plants, checking for weeds, watering the soil, and harvesting ripe vegetables. Clara marveled at the variety: bright red tomatoes, leafy greens, and small orange carrots peeking from the earth. She had never realized how much care went into growing food, and she felt a deep respect for the work. Luke's hands moved confidently among the plants, and she noticed how his touch was gentle yet firm, guiding rather than forcing. During a brief pause, Clara admitted something she hadn't told anyone before.
I've
always felt a little invisible, she said, her voice quiet. People in the city, they don't really see you. They pass by, and you feel like you're just there. Nothing more. Luke listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. He didn't rush to comfort her or offer empty words. Instead, he simply said, I see you, and I notice the care you give, not just here, but in the way you approach everything.
That counts for something.
Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. No one had ever said something like that to her before. It wasn't a grand declaration or a compliment, just an acknowledgement. And somehow, that simple recognition meant more to her than anything she had ever heard. She realized that trust wasn't about words alone, but about the quiet ways someone could show they cared and noticed.
As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with soft pinks and oranges, Luke led Clara to the paddock where the horses were grazing.
He encouraged her to take one of the younger horses for a short walk. At first, Clara hesitated, unsure if she could handle the animal. But Luke's calm presence and patient instructions gave her the courage to try. The horse moved steadily beside her, and Clara felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in years.
When they returned, Clara admitted, almost shyly, I think I understand what you meant earlier about patience, observation, care.
It feels good to slow down, to notice things, to feel seen. Luke smiled gently, placing a hand briefly on her shoulder, a touch that was reassuring but not demanding. It takes time, he said. And you're learning. That's all that matters. That evening, after dinner, Clara sat by the window of her room, looking out over the fields bathed in moonlight. She thought about the day, the work, the animals, and the quiet moments shared with Luke. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of belonging. It wasn't just about being on the ranch, it was about feeling safe enough to be herself without pretense or fear. Days turned into weeks, and Clara's confidence grew. She learned the rhythm of ranch life, the way the animals responded to gentle guidance, and the satisfaction that came from seeing her efforts bear fruit. And through it all, her bond with Luke deepened, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through small shared experiences that built trust and understanding. One afternoon, while they were repairing a fence together, Clara admitted something that made her heart pound. Rest.
I've never had someone reach out to me, she said softly, almost afraid of what she was saying.
No one's ever really taken my hand to guide me or to help me feel safe.
Luke paused, looking at her with calm, steady eyes. He didn't speak immediately.
Base. Instead, he simply moved closer, offering his hand, slowly, gently. Then let me, he said quietly, and his smile was patient, without pressure. Breath. Clara hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand in his. It was a small gesture, but it carried a weight she hadn't anticipated. Breath. She felt the warmth of his palm, the steadiness of his presence, and for the first time in her life she felt truly seen and accepted. The trust she had built over weeks, the small moments of shared work and quiet conversation, culminated in that single, gentle connection. As the evening sky deepened into twilight, Clara realized something important. Trust, care, and connection weren't about grand declarations or dramatic confessions. They were about small, consistent actions, moments of understanding, gestures of patience, and the willingness to be present for someone else. And Luke, with his quiet strength and gentle guidance, had given her all of that. Clara stayed by his side until the stars appeared, feeling the rhythm of the ranch, the calm of the night, and the quiet heartbeat of someone who truly cared.
It wasn't love in the dramatic sense, not yet.
It was something more subtle and profound, the beginning of trust, the opening of a heart, and the realization that sometimes the smallest gestures could mean the most. By the time she returned to her room, the moonlight washing over her face, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had come to the ranch to escape the noise of the city, but she had found something more valuable, a place where she could be herself, and someone who could meet her there, patiently, gently, and without judgment. That night, as she lay down, Clara whispered to herself, almost as a promise, maybe I can finally let someone in. Broke. Over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across the ranch. Clara woke to the quiet sound of the wind moving through the trees and the low hum of animals beginning their day. The peacefulness of the ranch had become a comforting routine for her. She had grown used to the rhythm of life here, the early mornings, the chores, the care of animals, and the quiet evenings spent talking or working beside Luke. But today, she could sense something different in the air. A storm was coming, and the clouds, dark and heavy, loomed over the fields in the distance. Luke was already outside, inspecting the fences along the northern pasture. When Clara stepped out, he looked up and gave her a brief nod. "Morning," he said, his voice steady as always. "The wind's picking up. We'll need to secure the animals and the barns today. It's going to be a long one." Clara felt a flicker of nervousness. Storms in the city had always been loud, chaotic, and frightening, but out here in the open land, they could be unpredictable. Luke noticed her hesitation and offered a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said.
We'll get through it together." They began their work immediately. First, they checked the barns, making sure all doors were latched tightly and the animals had enough food and water.
Clara carried buckets and helped fasten loose boards, her muscles straining with the effort. Luke moved beside her, calmly guiding her hands when necessary, but never rushing or criticizing. There was something comforting in his presence. His calmness acted like a shield against the storm that was approaching. By mid-morning, the sky had darkened further, and the wind began to howl through the trees. Clara felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest. The storm was coming fast, and she realized she had never faced anything like this alone. Her hands trembled slightly as she secured a gate, and Luke noticed immediately. "You're doing fine," he said gently. "Take your time. The animals can sense our calm. If we stay steady, they'll stay calm too." Clara nodded, taking a deep breath and focusing on the task at hand. The storm seemed to echo the tension she had been carrying inside herself. The fear of losing control, of being vulnerable, and of letting someone see her weaknesses. But Luke's calmness reminded her that vulnerability didn't mean failure. It could mean trust, patience, and connection. By noon, the first drops of rain began to fall, lightly at first, then harder, pounding against the wooden roof of the barn. Clara and Luke moved quickly, bringing animals into sheltered areas and securing the smaller buildings. The horses neighed nervously as the wind picked up, and Clara felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders.
She realized that caring for these animals, for the land, and for the life she was building here required courage she hadn't known she had.
Breath. Luke worked tirelessly beside her, but he also kept checking on her, making sure she stayed safe. When she slipped slightly on the wet ground, he caught her arm without a word, steadying her. The touch was brief, but grounding. Clara felt a surge of gratitude and something deeper, a recognition that she wasn't alone, even in the storm.
As the afternoon wore on, the storm intensified.
Rain fell in sheets, and the wind threatened to uproot smaller trees. Clara's hands were raw from carrying buckets and securing the gates, and fatigue began to weigh heavily on her. Luke noticed her exhaustion and suggested they take a short break inside the barn. They sat on a hay bale, dripping wet, their clothes sticking to them. Breath. Clara shivered, but Luke offered her a dry towel he had tucked under his arm. "Here," he said softly. "Take a moment. You've done more than enough today." Clara wrapped the towel around herself and looked at him, her eyes reflecting both fatigue and admiration.
I don't know if I could have done this alone," she admitted. "The storm, it's bigger than I expected." Luke's gaze was steady, calm, and understanding.
"You're stronger than you think," he said. "Strength isn't just about muscles or endurance. It's about persistence, patience, and heart."
"You have all of that."
The words warmed her in a way she hadn't expected. For so long, she had doubted herself, questioning her abilities and fearing that she wasn't capable of handling challenges. But here, with Luke's quiet guidance and encouragement, she realized that strength could be nurtured, learned, and shared. It wasn't something she had to prove alone. Once the rain lightened slightly, they returned to finish securing the barns and the fences. Clara felt a growing confidence with each task she completed. The animals responded to her touch, calm under her care, and the fences held steady against the wind. By the late afternoon, the storm began to pass, leaving the world wet, glistening, and refreshed. Clara felt an unexpected pride in what they had accomplished together. After the storm, they walked among the fields, checking the animals and the land. The air smelled fresh, like the earth itself had been cleansed. Clara noticed the small details she hadn't before, the way the grass bent under the weight of the raindrops, the soft mud at the edges of the pasture, and the quiet birds emerging from the trees. Luke moved beside her, silently pointing out signs of the storm's impact and offering gentle guidance on how to repair the minor damage. Casting a warm glow across the soaked landscape, Clara felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the ranch, but to Luke. He had been patient, supportive, and steady throughout the chaos. He hadn't judged her, pressured her, or dismissed her fears. He had simply been present, guiding her when necessary and allowing her space to grow. She realized that trust and connection weren't built in calm moments alone. They were forged in challenges, in shared struggles, and in the quiet reassurance of someone who cared. That evening, after they had finished the last chores, Clara sat on the porch, wringing out her wet hair and looking at the sky painted with colors of the sunset. Luke joined her, handing her a warm cup of tea, but didn't speak at first, simply sharing the quiet satisfaction of a day survived, a storm weathered, and a bond strengthened. Finally, Clara broke the silence. I was afraid today," she admitted softly. "Not just of the storm, but of failing. Of not being enough." Luke looked at her, his eyes calm and kind. "You were more than enough," he said. "The storm was difficult, yes.
But you faced it. You learned, adapted, and grew. That's what matters. And you didn't do it alone. I was here, and you accepted help."
That's what trust is. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words.
Pop!
She had spent so much of her life avoiding help, afraid that accepting it would make her weak. But now she understood that vulnerability and trust could be sources of strength. not weakness. She realized that sharing struggles, leaning on someone and being supported didn't diminish her. It made her stronger. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, Clara and Luke sat quietly, sipping tea and listening to the sounds of the ranch. Animals were calm, the fences held strong, and the world felt safe again. Clara thought about how much she had grown since arriving, the skills she had learned, the confidence she had gained, and the bond she had formed with someone who respected her pace, her fears, and her heart. Later, as she lay in her bed, Clara reflected on the storm and the day's challenges. She realized that life, like the ranch, wasn't always easy or predictable. Breaths. Storms would come, but they could be faced with patience, courage, and the support of those who truly cared. And for the first time, she felt ready to trust someone, to allow herself to be guided, supported, and connected without fear. That night, as the wind settled and the ranch grew quiet, Clara whispered to herself, a small smile on her lips. I can face more than I thought. I'm not alone anymore. The storm had tested her, shown her her limits, and helped her discover her strength. It had also revealed the quiet, steadfast support of someone who had become a part of her life in the gentlest way. Clara knew that more challenges would come, but for now, she felt a sense of peace, trust, and connection that she had never experienced before. And in that quiet realization, she felt her heart opening, ready for what the future might bring. Spring had arrived on the ranch, painting the fields with bright greens and the first blooms of wildflowers. The air smelled sweet and fresh, carrying the faint scent of new grass and earth warmed by the sun. Clara woke early that morning, as usual, feeling a quiet excitement. Today felt different, though she couldn't immediately put it into words. Perhaps it was the way the sunlight poured through her window, or the soft chirping of birds welcoming the day. Or maybe it was the feeling in her chest, a mixture of contentment, hope, and something deeper she hadn't yet named. Luke was already outside, feeding the horses. When Clara stepped onto the porch, he looked up and gave her a warm smile, one that reached his eyes and made her feel instantly lighter. Morning, he said, tossing a small handful of oats to one of the horses. Ready for the day? Clara nodded, gripping her coffee mug tightly. I think so. It's nice outside. The storm last week made me realize how much I enjoy calm mornings like this. Luke chuckled softly, brushing his hands together. Storms have a way of teaching us, don't they? Sometimes the calm feels even sweeter afterward. They worked together as usual, feeding the animals, tending to the garden, and checking the fences. Clara's hands moved with confidence now, carrying water, grooming the horses, and tying gates securely without hesitation. She had learned so much in the weeks since arriving. How to notice small changes in the animals, how to repair fences efficiently, and even how to anticipate the weather by the way the wind shifted through the trees. Luke watched her with quiet pride, never overtly praising her, but she could see it in the gentle way he moved alongside her and the calm patience in his eyes. By midday, the sun had climbed high, and the warmth encouraged a short rest under the shade of a large oak tree. Luke handed Clara a glass of water, and they sat together, watching the horses graze. Clara noticed something about this quiet companionship. She didn't feel the need to speak constantly, nor did Luke. Words weren't always necessary between them. The shared presence, the quiet understanding, and the rhythm of work spoke volumes. After a long silence, Clara finally spoke. Bow. Luke, I think I understand something about myself now. About trust. About care. I've been afraid to let anyone in for so long. Afraid of being hurt or ignored. But here, with you, I feel safe. Her voice trembled slightly, and she looked down at her hands. Luke reached out and rested his hand gently on hers, not pressing, not rushing, simply resting it there. You're safe, he said softly.
You've taken time to learn, to grow, and to open yourself.
That's not easy. But you're doing it, and I'm honored to be here with you while you do. Clara looked up, meeting his steady gaze. There was something in his eyes that reassured her, something that spoke of patience, kindness, and understanding. Bury. She realized that this was the first time in her life that someone had not only seen her, but truly noticed her for who she was, not just what she could do or how she appeared. The afternoon was spent in quiet work. Clara tended to the garden, harvesting ripe vegetables while Luke repaired a section of fence near the barn. Their movements were fluid, almost in sync, each knowing what the other needed without having to ask. It was in these small, shared moments, hands brushing over soil, laughter at a mischievous horse, the exchange of quiet words, that the bond between them grew deeper. As the day drew toward evening, Luke suggested they take a walk through the fields. Clara agreed, and they wandered slowly side by side, the soft grass brushing their ankles and the sun dipping lower in the sky. There was a peacefulness in the air, a stillness that allowed them to be fully present with one another. Clara paused for a moment, looking out at the vast landscape. "It's beautiful here," she said quietly.
I never imagined a place like this could feel like home.
Luke nodded, his eyes following hers across the fields. "Home isn't just a place," he said.
It's a feeling, a sense of safety, of belonging.
Bray. And sometimes it comes from the people we choose to be around, not just the land we live on. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had been so cautious for so long, protecting herself from disappointment, rejection, and loneliness. But now, standing here beside Luke, she felt a quiet courage rising within her. Brash. She realized that she didn't need to be afraid anymore. Trust could be earned, slowly, nurtured, patiently, and it could bring a sense of joy she had never known. As the sun began to set, casting warm golden light across the fields, Clara stopped walking. She turned toward Luke, her heart pounding. Breaths. "Luke, She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think I'm ready." Luke tilted his head, waiting patiently, his hand still hovering near hers. "Ready for what?" he asked softly. Clara took a deep breath, then reached out her hand.
I'm ready to trust you. To let someone be here with me.
"Or take your hand."
For a moment, Luke said nothing, simply watching her, a gentle smile forming on his face.
Brett. Then, slowly, he moved closer and took her hand in his. The gesture was simple, quiet, but it carried the weight of everything they had shared, the challenges, the quiet moments, the storms weathered together, and the trust they had built. Clara felt the warmth of his hand, steady and reassuring, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to lean on someone without fear. They walked the rest of the field hand in hand, the sky painted with shades of pink and orange, and Clara felt a sense of peace she had never known. The world around them was quiet. The animals settled, and the ranch bathed in the gentle glow of evening. She realized that trust, patience, and care were not always shown through grand gestures. Sometimes they were shown through quiet moments, shared work, and gentle, steady hands. Later they returned to the porch, sitting together as the stars began to twinkle overhead. Clara rested her head against Luke's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the calm strength of his presence.
"I never thought I could feel this way," she admitted softly.
Rasps. Not scared, not alone.
Just content. Safe.
Luke
kissed her forehead gently, a gesture that spoke of understanding and care rather than passion or urgency.
You deserve to feel safe, he said, and you deserve someone who respects your pace, who values you, and who will be here patiently every step of the way. She had come to the ranch to escape the noise of the city, to find solitude, and perhaps a new beginning. What she had found was more than that, a sense of belonging, a connection, and a trust that had been missing from her life for so long. Luke had shown her that love and care could be patient, gentle, and grounded in reality.
In the days that followed, Clara and Luke continued their work on the ranch, their bond growing with each shared experience.
They repaired fences together, tended to the animals, and cared for the garden. But beyond the work, they shared quiet conversations, laughter, and the comfort of presence. The small gestures, the brushing of hands while feeding a horse, the shared smiles over a repaired fence, the quiet acknowledgement of each other's efforts, became the foundation of a trust that was deeper than words could express. Ow! Clara began to notice the subtle ways Luke cared for her, not just physically but emotionally. He listened when she spoke, offered guidance without pressure, and never judged her fears or past mistakes. But in return, Clara found herself opening up, sharing her thoughts, her dreams, and even her vulnerabilities. She realized that trust was not about grand declarations or dramatic confessions. It was about small, consistent acts of care and understanding. One evening, as they watched the sunset over the hills, Clara spoke softly.
Luke, thank you.
For being patient with me, for showing me that it's okay to trust someone, and for letting me take this step.
Luke turned to her, his eyes reflecting the fading sunlight.
There's nothing to thank me for, he said gently. You chose to trust. You chose to open your heart. That courage comes from you, Clara. I'm just here to walk beside you. Clara felt tears welling up, not of sadness, but of relief and joy. She had spent so much of her life building walls, protecting herself from hurt, and now for the first time she felt safe enough to let them down. She squeezed Luke's hand, feeling the warmth and steadiness of his presence. As the night settled over the ranch, Clara realized something profound. Life, with all its challenges, storms, and uncertainties, could be faced with courage and trust. And sometimes, the smallest gestures, a gentle hand, a quiet smile, a shared moment, could carry more meaning than anything else. She had learned that love and care didn't have to be dramatic or overwhelming. They could be patient, steady, and enduring breaths. That night, lying in her bed and listening to the soft sounds of the ranch, Clara whispered to herself, I am not alone. I am seen. I am safe, and I am ready for what comes next. For the first time in her life, she felt a complete sense of belonging, not just to the ranch or to the animals or even to the work she did every day, but to the quiet, steady presence of someone who cared for her, respected her, and walked beside her through every challenge. And in that knowledge, she found peace, hope, and the gentle beginning of love. Breaths, the work, the storms, and the quiet shared moments had taught her a lesson she would carry forever. That trust, patience, and genuine care could transform not only a person's days but also their heart. And as she drifted into sleep, with the stars twinkling above and the world calm and steady around her, Clara felt a deep, unwavering certainty. She had found her place. She had found someone she could trust. And she had finally learned that taking someone's hand could mean so much more than she had ever imagined.